Black like me. Black like me. Black like me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, good people. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. You know, one of the things that I love about hosting a podcast, this podcast, and there are many things I love about it, is all the interesting people with whom I get to interact and then have conversations with them on this podcast about their journeys, the lessons they've learned, and how they're making a difference in their own corner of the world. Well, today's show is no exception. Neither is today's guest. My guest is Raven Jemison, a sports business executive with about 10 years of experience in managing multi-million-dollar business operations, is the new executive vice president of business operations for the Milwaukee Bucks. Oh yeah, you better fear the deer. I'm so glad that she's been in Wisconsin. She's been in Milwaukee probably since February. We met earlier this year and we'll probably get around to talking a little bit about this. But prior to Raven's time in Milwaukee, she worked for the NBA League Office, the San Francisco 49ers, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the Florida Panthers. Now, if you weren't tracking when I said that, that is the NBA, the MLB, the NHL, and the NFL. I don't know how many business professionals have served in all of those arenas. And so I just think that that is so exciting. One of the things that Peter Feigin, the president of the Milwaukee Bucks, said was that the Bucks brought Raven in to really help to think strategically about how to operate coming out of COVID, as well as focusing on issues of community justice, equity, inclusion, and community connectedness. And so I'm really honored to have Raven here today on the show. Raven, welcome to Black Like Me. It is so good to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Dr. G. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, and also welcome to Wisconsin. I mean, I don't know. Listen, Raven, they must be taking care of you, because to get a sister who grew up in Alabama to move to Wisconsin in February, there must have been some tea leaves, some handwriting on the wall, some nudging from the Holy Spirit, or Peter just really did a good job of recruitment, or E, all the above, but you came here in February.
That is it. You're right. E, all of the above. And I moved here from New York. So as you mentioned, I've lived all over the country, but Milwaukee has been great so far. Wisconsin has been great so far. Everybody's been so hospitable. It's been a great change. I've lived in, as you mentioned, Alabama. So it's not that much different than growing up in Alabama. So it's no surprise with respect to the speed of things, which I can appreciate, having lived in New York and San Francisco, where everything is 100 miles an hour towards a brick wall, to be honest. So it's been good. You are right. Peter Feigin is a heck of a salesperson. And he definitely did a phenomenal job of getting me to come to Milwaukee. So I'm excited to take on the opportunity ahead, but most importantly, excited to talk to you today about what we're trying to do over here.
Definitely. You know, Raven, before we jump into just some of the conversation we're going to have today, I have a little segment at the top of my show that's called Black Icebreakers. Okay. And so when I have my Black guests on, I have questions that I like to ask them, and they're not trick questions, but anyway, I'll talk about why I do them a little bit, but I love them because they give us a chance to talk a little bit about Black culture, and whether we grew up in Alabama or Wisconsin or Illinois, it's interesting how some of our experiences are the same. What I've noticed is, because I'm older than you, that some of my questions are generational. So I'm gonna have to make sure I tweak this for younger folks. But let me just start with the easy one. Grits or cream of wheat?
Grits without question. With cheese. And I don't know, there's some people that eat grits with sugar, which is a little suspect. I don't know what that's about, but grits, salt, pepper, and cheese. I'm vegan now, which I do vegan cheese, but grits, hands down.
Yeah. Now, I'm one of those people you don't understand. I like a little grits with my sugar. Mm-hmm. And so I put butter butter on it, the sugar, then my eggs over it, then I break my bacon or my sausage up in it. And if I'm feeling good, I might break my sourdough toast with some grape jelly over in it. I eat a great bowl by the time I'm done with it. But you say you don't know about the sugar people.
No, Dr. G, we got to talk about that offline. I don't know about the sugar situation.
Now, Raven, I told you that my wife Jackie is from Alabama. We have one child. Lexi's 24 now. We have fought over that child for 24 years because Jackie too likes butter, salt, and cheese in her grits. And so don't put no salt in that baby's grits. Don't put no sugar in that baby. Now that baby's now 24, but it's funny. She puts a little salt and a little and a little sugar so she can keep her family together.
Yeah,
But
you got to make people, just make everybody happy.
Definitely. Listen, when you were growing up, were you familiar with the concept of splitting the pole or not splitting the pole while people were? Well, tell me what does it mean to split the pole?
The youngest person dies or something like that, right? So from what I've heard, I grew up in, again, Alabama, very superstitious grandma. And I remember walking with her at some point in my childhood and
come on.
Not to split the pole. Do not split the pole. And I'm like, oh my, okay, what? Okay. It traumatized me to the point that now I still don't split the pole with people.
I don't either.
So, but again, am I right? Is it that the young?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it is. So splitting the pole is if there's a street light, a mailbox, it could be a bike rack. You don't go on both sides of it. You either go on the left or the right of it. Either it could be the youngest person dies or it signifies splitting up your family somehow, but you do not split the pole. And it's funny because I've been doing this and some of my close friends who are white, listen to it. When we walk down the street, they get ready to go on the other side of something just to mess with me. And then they'll say, no, I know better. I know I can't do that to you. Oh, you know what? So you said your grandmother was superstitious. So that takes me to a whole nother question. What did your grandmother do? Were there specific things that your grandmother family did when it was thundering and lightning outside? Were there certain protocols or things you had to do inside? Talk to me about that.
Okay, so first off, you need to be quiet because the Lord is doing his work. That's the first thing.
Yes.
So that's the wait. It's like, why do everybody needs to stop what they're doing and be quiet because the Lord's doing his work. So that's the first thing. Second thing is you need to turn off all the lights. You need to turn off everything to make sure you don't get electrocuted or whatever it is.
Yes.
I grew up in Alabama where tornadoes were real, right? So like tornadoes is a real situation. So sometimes we would all huddle like in a room without a window. And again, just be quiet because the Lord's doing his work. But that I never really understood, like God can do his work with us talking because now the power might go out or now it's dark. So what are we just supposed to be here inside? But yeah.
Oh my goodness. I love it. I love it. So listen, while we're on the subject of your grandmother, did she wear what was called a duster? Do you know what a duster is?
Is it like, I don't know. I might know when you tell me.
They look like they made out of sheet, like almost like bed sheets, but it was like a little house dress that snapped. We call them dusters, but grandmamas used to wear them, but they would snap all the way down the front.
We call them muumuus. So muumuus, yes, yep.
Muumuus.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Muumuus in the house. Muumuus in the house.
I'm loving this. Just about 2 more questions.
Yeah.
Frank's, Tabasco, or Louisiana? This is why I accidentally said Louisiana to you earlier. And first of all, what are these things? If folks listen thinking, what does it mean? Frank's, Tabasco. First, tell me what they are, and then tell me which one is the only real one in this list.
First off, they're hot sauces. Tabasco to me is in a separate category because Tabasco a little bit goes a long way. If I'm going to use Tabasco on something, it's to accent the spice. If I'm using Frank's, because it's Frank's is the answer to your question. If I'm using Frank's on something, I'm drowning it in Frank's. So
Gotcha.
Not two answers to your question, but they're all hot sauces. And Frank's is the way to go if you're going to put hot sauce on your eggs, if you're going to put hot sauce on your greens. Frank's 100%. If you're going to go black, you're going to go a little Tabasco because I just want a little accent of spice to my black eyed peas.
It goes a long way.
Yes,
oh my God. I'm loving this. Raven. 2 more questions. If you attended Black church growing up, did you ever have to memorize an Easter speech?
100%. I actually said my Easter speech the other day. I was saying it to my mom on Easter, but yes, when you, as early as I could remember, where you could say 3 or 4 lines, you had your Easter speech and you had to get up and say it. And then the older you got, we were in Easter plays. So you had
Yeah.
like a play at church, but yes.
But you had the Easter speech in your new Easter clothes, I'm sure. Your new
What?
Easter outfits. Oh my goodness. Man, I have so many of these, but I'll stop now. This is so funny. Did your family, particularly your grandmother, I love the fact that you said your grandmother was superstitious. Did your family talk about what it meant or symbolized if it was raining while the sun was still shining?
The devil is beating his wife, is what I would.
No, I'm not laughing. I have to keep saying I'm not laughing at domestic violence. I'm not laughing at the devil's domestic violence. But here's what I'm laughing at. You're from Alabama. I'm from Wisconsin. I ask these same questions. I've got like 40 that I ask. I pull them out. What's amazing to me, Raven, is Black folks, whether we are from the Eastern Seaboard or the West Coast or down South, we hold some of these things in common. How does your grandmother tell you to sit down and be quiet when it's storming? And my grandmama in Chicago is telling me to sit down, be still. How do people in Florida think that the devil's beating his wife? Like, what does that mean if it's, but, or splitting the pole? And so I've got you know that I'm a history buff, and I've got a colleague who teaches in the Afro-Am department. And she said the proof that slavery and systemic racism, that it has not destroyed Black people, is that it destroyed people don't create culture. And the fact is, all of these have to do with culture. And I tell you what, I get notices. The majority of my listeners are white because they want to hear Black folks talking about their lives and experiences in a way that's accessible. Like we're speaking knowing that we're comfortably us. We're going to talk like Black people. And I don't mean vernacular. I just mean comfortably about our experiences. But we know that non-Blacks are listening. They're blown away because they don't necessarily have those same kinds of connections or those same kinds of stories, or can't find other friends whose grandmamas told them to do something when it's storming because the Lord is at work. So this is just a testament. We come from people who told stories, and I don't mean lying. That's a whole nother Black icebreaker. Well, you know, could you say the word lie growing up? Was lie a cuss word when you were growing up?
Lie was a curse word.
Yes, it was.
Lie was I never understood it. Don't tell a story. Don't tell stories.
You tell a story. We didn't say fibs. It was a story. Like you telling Mama Raven in here telling stories on people. Mm-hmm. We would say that, but we could not say lie. Oh man, Raven, thank you for that. You know what? I've been doing this for 130 episodes, and I never get tired because one, it sets an atmosphere for the guests to know that we're just going to talk like friends, but it also gives us a chance to laugh, that even the things that we may have thought was just our family, until someone else asks you about it, to understand we are the descendants and the recipients of a lot of historical culture, and it helps us to survive and it helps us to be successful. So thanks for taking a little bit to answer those. I really appreciate that.
Of course. And let me just add, it's one of the reasons why I love being Black, Dr. G. Like there's just something about, and I've lived again all over, as you mentioned at the top, but there's something about no matter where I go in any city I go in, there is a connection I immediately have with my Black colleagues. There's new colleagues when I'm stepping into a space. There's an immediate connection that I have with people in no matter what city it is. I can have these types of conversations. And to your point, it's for the culture, it's about the culture. And it's one of the reasons why I absolutely love being Black.
I do. I love it too. I love it. That's why I love calling the show Black Like Me, because we get to celebrate that. It is not a disability. It's not a hindrance in our eyes. And it's why when we move to a new place or new area, we want to know where the Black people are. It's not that we can't live in diverse places. We are very adept at doing that. For goodness sake, you worked for the Florida Panthers, hockey players in Florida. I mean, talk about anomalies upon anomalies. But we find a way to connect. You know, I love the fact that I could be someplace. It could be raining and the sun is shining, and look at another Black person and say, ooh, and somebody say, you know, it's going down. They fighting, the devil's getting up. You know, it's just interesting. Or it'll be storming and somebody Black will just say in a restaurant or something, let me get off this phone. If my grandmama knew I was on this phone during the storm. So I love it. And I love the fact that holds us together. You and I connected probably back in February or March. I think it might have been your first day. Peter Fagan worked with me, asked me to do some trainings on cross-cultural relationships with the Milwaukee with the Milwaukee Bucks. I was really honored. I met them through my connection with Kyle Korver. Kyle's been on the show as well. He connected me to Peter. And I think it was your first day, I think, when I was doing my training, talking about either systemic racism or white privilege or something like that. So what did you think coming into the Bucks? And the first thing you interact, your first meeting is this brother from Madison talking to the organization about systemic racism.
Dr. G, when you put up your first slide and the first slide said white privilege, and I am in Wisconsin, like nothing against Wisconsin, but my first thing is, I don't see that being a word that's like casually tossed around here in Wisconsin. So your first interaction with me on my first day, you're right, it was my first day. And I was like, whoa, we have 4 more of these. So I immediately sent Peter a text and I was like, you didn't tell me about Dr. G. Like this, you kept him secret from me. But I will say, and I immediately emailed you after the first session and I said, 1, thank you. 2, these conversations aren't being had in predominantly white spaces. They're not being had in spaces where people like me and you might be the only ones and feel like we have to carry the conversation. So I just wanted to send a thank you to you and just continue to have dialogue with you, because it was just a welcoming conversation that to me needs to be had. And we're very fortunate here at the Bucks where people want to have the conversation. So yeah, that was my first interaction, and my eyes, that emoji that you send on your phone where your eyes are like wide-eyed, I sent it to, and I was like, whoa, like, okay, this is real.
We're gonna do this, Peter. This is what we at. That's what we're gonna do. I love it. I love that. I'm excited about your role. We're gonna get to the Bucks role in just a bit. I'm a huge fan of the Bucks, but you've worked for professional sporting leagues, for the majority of your career, but hockey, baseball, football, and basketball. First of all, I have forgotten or didn't know that people were playing ice hockey in Florida. And so was that your first sports job or first job in the sporting arena? How does a Black sister from Alabama end up working for the Florida Panthers? I love that you did that.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I tell anybody that wants to get into sports. You have to remove every bit of obstacle in your mind to say you can't do something and you won't do something if you want to be in sports. So that's the first thing. And the answer, quite frankly, is it was my time to be in sports. I had tried to get into sports from a professional sports business standpoint for quite some time. And for those that might be listening that have heard me before, I actually went to school thinking that I was going to be an optometrist. And
yes,
got into optometry school, or was going into optometry school. And I just said, let me defer a year in this plan to be an eye doctor for the next 60 years and see if I can get into sports. And, I tried and fortune had it that I happened to be in South Florida at the time that the Panthers were having a career fair. And when you talk about removing obstacles and saying you can't do something, and you just go to a place and say, I want to work here, I don't care what you have for me, just give me a chance and I will prove that I, 1, belong here, and 2, you won't be sad or disappointed when you hire me. And I just so happened to talk to the head of inside sales, which is the entry-level sales department. $7.25, Dr. G. An hour is what I was making to sell hockey tickets in South Florida. And I mean, 2 weeks after my conversation with him, he brought me down to South Florida and I was selling hockey. And I grew up a sports fan, big sports fan. Hockey was not one of those sports. So I had to learn the sport. And then I also had to learn to perfect my craft as a salesperson. But the short answer to your question is I was ready for whatever role was ahead of me, and I was going to just kill it. I was not going to waste the opportunity and say that this is the launching pad for me to make this a career. And I mean, I guess that's 15 years later, I'm here.
That's amazing, Raven. Now you're the number 2 in command on the business side of the Bucks. For your peers around the NBA, how unique is it that you have been a part of other sporting leagues, again, like NHL, MLB, the NFL? Is it unique that you have experience in so many other sporting leagues?
It actually is pretty unique, and it's not until I'm sitting for one of these interviews that it's brought back to my attention, the uniqueness of it. I didn't set out to say I need to work in every league so I could be really good at a job. It just happened that way. And again, you just say yes when opportunities come. And when you leave hockey and you go to Major League Baseball, to a storied franchise like the Pittsburgh Pirates, I'm not always thinking about where I'm going to go next with respect to a league. I always think, where am I going to go next that stretches me from an opportunity to advance my career and to make an impact in my community and to make an impact with other folks who look like me. So I wasn't necessarily thinking I need to work in all these leagues, but I've just been blessed to get tapped on the shoulder to see each of these leagues at a very high level. And again, before coming to the Bucks, working for the NBA league office, which to me is what kind of catapulted me to make me ready for a role like this. But it's unique for sure, but the experience is the same. You got to sell tickets, and you got to sell partnerships, and at the end of the day, you got to make your boss look good, which is what I hope to do for Mr. Fagan.
You're making the whole team look good. Now, for you to be new to Wisconsin and in this role, we're just glad to have you.
Thank
you to be, and I mean that sincerely. And we want to get you down to Madison for a visit just to see that y'all got we got a lot of people here that's got a lot of love for the Bucks and for folks who work there. But if you'd worked in community relations or helping to, diversify the team or the vice president for DEI, we would have been just so happy that you're here. I love that you're working on the business side, that you're the number 2 on the business side, that you're thinking about finance and probably work with contracts and again, things that places where we're not always visible in those roles, or if we are, and we don't necessarily know about it. But I appreciate the fact that you bring that business acumen of the various experiences that you've gotten. So I love that you're in non-traditional places, making a mark in the Bucks, but also making our community very, very proud.
Thank you. That means a lot coming from a leader in our community, right? I mean, when I came here and when I talked to Peter about coming here, I was very intentional about what my next role was going to be leaving the NBA league office. Because to be honest, I loved the job that I was at the league office. I was traveling, I was traveling 48, 49 weeks a year. I was working with various NBA teams across the country, and I really loved it. But I did say that when I leave the NBA, it needs to be a role in which I am not a taker as part of a sports business community. And by that, I mean, too often people come to sports franchises and say, how can we make the most money? How can we build the biggest arena? How can we build the biggest stadium? And the truth is, we have to be givers in our community. So I said, I go to my next team, I need to feel a connection to a community. So to say, how can I be of service? That has to be in addition to having to be good at my job, which Peter will say is the first priority, and generating revenue and growing our business, which is what keeps me up at night and my primary priority. I have to feel like personally I am connected to a community in which I can be of service to, and one in which I can make an impact in. So to answer your question, or to, I guess, piggyback on you saying that you're glad I'm here, I'm glad I'm here, because there's not many opportunities like this in all of professional sports, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely. Part of what really drew me to working with the Bucks was the fact that they're the Bucks. That I was having a chance to spend time, a little bit with the head coach, with one of the owners, with the GM, with the president. That was very, very affirming. But as I listened to the commitment to understanding these issues, of understanding Milwaukee. I mean, when I came in and did those 4-part trainings, Peter allowed me to come in and just really begin dismantling some of people's beliefs about wealth and equality and access, and to make privilege and systemic racism a very real thing, because you've got to dismantle before you understand your responsibility to the community. So the fact that they're bringing in people who are helping the Bucks to be socially responsible while still bringing 100 people on a call, while a Black consultant and trainer and pastor is talking to them from a personal, academic, experiential kind of perspective, showed me some true sincerity. To be honest, I was already a Bucks fan. But when I started interacting with Peter and his team, and I saw how sincere people were in the office for getting this, it was impressive. And you were on those calls. I had to stay like a half hour after my prescribed time because people just wanted to ask questions or to voice things. And so that's very impressive to me because people have a sense that athletes should care about giving back. But I don't think we talk enough about the franchises and their responsibilities because athletes come and go, as you know, but that the Bucks will remain in Milwaukee, but players will not always be there. And so what is the responsibility of the franchise? And the fact that you all are wrestling with that and you're allowing community people like myself to help you think about that, it's very impressive, Raven. It's very impressive.
And it's something you just hit on, Dr. G. We're not experts. So I think the first step is admitting that you don't know everything and following with authenticity. So I want to be clear, not just following community leaders and riding their coattails, community activists and community partners, not just saying, I want to attach our name to you because this is the work you're doing. We have to authentically connect to those in our communities that are leading the way and leveraging our platform and what we are as a brand to help elevate whatever the work is that they're doing. Because I think the other part of this is, community responsibility, corporate social responsibility. You'll see a lot of these titles in professional sports organizations, and a lot of it, photo opportunities for your execs and for your owners and for the players. But there's a difference when there's an authentic connection with the community, which I think is what we have and what we're continuing to work towards with respect to the Milwaukee Bucks.
Hi, this is Dan Groupie from Monona, Wisconsin. I listen to Black Like Me because it brings alive for me what it means to be a Black person living in Wisconsin and living in the United States through people's stories and lived experiences. And this show has helped me to understand my role as a white person in either allowing racial disparities and injustices to be perpetuated or to take a more active role in dismantling these systems. And I'm a Patreon supporter because I feel like it's critical to amplify this message and help bring more people to the fight.
Now, in its 5th season, the award-winning Black Like Me podcast has a reach throughout the U.S. in over 100 countries around the world. It is the work of a dedicated team of people here in Madison, Wisconsin, dedicated to changing the conversation surrounding race. When you sign up to support Black Like Me as a patron, you support the work that they are doing and help create better quality content and a better society. By going to patreon.com/blacklikeme and signing up at any of the levels offered, you are not only signing up to make a monthly donation, you are also joining a growing community of people interested in engaging the issue of race with a raw, unprecedented honesty. As a patron of the podcast, you will have access to exclusive content like extended interviews, bonus rants, and video chats with Dr. G. You will also have a chance to join the conversation that other patrons are already having with Dr. G about race in America. To become a patron of the show, go to patreon.com/blacklikeme or see the link in our show notes. And for as little as $2, you can support these important conversations and the work that Dr. G is doing. Thank you in advance.
Raven, I've often have highlighted sports as models of not perfect racial harmony, but a little bit more advanced racial harmony, because you see things like Brian's song. You see that when groups work together, the military and sporting, whether it's professional or not, sporting groups, because they have a common enemy and it's not within their ranks. You're fighting against, the Nets, or you're going against whoever you're at war with, that when the enemy is not within but outside, it sort of forces you to work together. So Raven, sometimes when I'm talking in the community, I'll hear people say, we got to be like sports teams. When I was in high school, I had black players on my team and I didn't really see color, and we got along because we all played against, the Devils, on the other side of town. And so there's been this thought that sports are the leaders in racial inclusion and what harmony looks like. You've been inside, all these various arenas and branches of professional sports. Do you think the sporting industry is ahead of the game in terms of how it wrestles with or models reconciled relationships, between its players and workers, or does it have work to do like every other industry?
So that is a great question. I do think that sports is a unifier. So there is without a question. I, again, from Alabama, proud graduate of Auburn University. When Auburn is playing the University of Alabama, or if Auburn is playing anybody, there is a mutual, when I say War Eagle to anybody, white, black, doesn't matter, we are together. Because to your point, it's about beating the enemy. In the locker room, I'm sure it's the same. I can't speak because I've never been in a locker room, but it's something that you brought up with Kyle Korver on your podcast. And it's something that he continues to harp on. And I believe it was the Players Tribune article that he wrote. It has to go beyond what happens in between the lines. As players, both as players, as employees. So to your point about coming in and doing the trainings with the Bucks, yeah, our enemy is the Nets tomorrow, but if we're not having authentic conversations about the impact of racial and social inequities and how it impacts disproportionately, Black people, and we're having those hard conversations, we can't just look at sports as a unifier in that way, if that makes sense. And
it does.
You also have to think about, there is this new era of athlete today that is using their platform to say, no, I'm not going to stick to sports. No, I'm not going to shut up and dribble. This is what I'm my platform, because to whom much is given, much is required. So you have athletes that are taking the mantle from your Muhammad Ali's and taking the mantle from, even your Billie Jean Kings and Jackie Robinsons to say, I don't want to be the one in my generation that just wastes my platform to not speak up for how things are not in the best spot all the time with respect to racial relations. So, to answer your question, yes, sports is a unifier on game day and is the lead up to game day, but it has to go deeper than that, in my opinion.
That's a very good point. That's a great answer. One of the things that I'm focusing on for this season of the podcast, this is our fifth season, is now what? Because a lot of people felt that once Trump left office, and you heard all the hoopla, Kamala Harris, look what this means for a woman of color as a vice president. Things are better now. The happy music at the end of the horror flick starts to play, and you're like, don't drop the crowbar. Don't drop, that thing ain't dead. That thing ain't dead. We kind of know when you've been through it, like it's not over. I feel that a lot of my friends, particularly my white colleagues, felt that the horror flick was over, that things are, that there's going to be no real pushback. There's not going to be any residual effects of the new election, and that we're just fine. And so the theme is, now what? Like, what does it take to keep that momentum? And so I guess I'm asking you, whether it's NHL or the NFL or baseball or basketball, what's the opportunity today for professional sports to help somehow heal men, build trust, build unity? What comes to mind when you think of the opportunity of franchises and athletes in helping us to turn a corner and become more sane, more humane, and more unified? Anything come to mind?
Honest conversations, Dr. G. We have to, going back to the last question you asked with respect to sports being a unifier, are we having honest conversations that everything outside our locker room, everything outside our front office is not roses? So it starts with, admitting that there's issues. And I go back to the stick to sports and hey, sports is supposed to make me feel better. Sports is supposed to give me an outlet when I watch it here. Right. I don't want to think about the ills of the world, and I don't want to think. the truth is those things are happening, whether it's the 2 hours where we're playing basketball or not, right? So
Right.
I think
That's real.
the first piece has to be for professional sports teams, franchises, anyone with a platform, to be honest, even outside of sports. We have to have honest conversations about where we are as a quote unquote post-racial society, because that was used a lot when Barack Obama was president and was elected for a second term. Oh, we are post-racial society. We are
Fixed.
yes.
It is finished. As our grandmamas would have said, it is finished.
That's 100% correct. But when you say what's next or now what, it's what the work that you're doing with respect to talking to people about what's at the core of this. Systemic. This isn't something that just one is fixed because Obama was president and because Kamala Harris is vice president. And it's not something that's fixed because slavery's over, right? There's issues that are at play that we all have to have honest conversations about. The wealth gap, the education gap, access to opportunity. So when we talk about what's next, to me, it's honest conversations to start, because we can't fix anything until we first talk about where the issues lie.
Sure. Who was the brother in the 68 Mexico City Olympics, the 400-meter runner? Was that Tommy Smith, who had the clenched black? Yeah, Tommy Smith.
Yeah.
That's right. Then there was a European gentleman. I forget which country he was from, but he was never celebrated as a hero in his country. Like, I did some research on him. He actually suffered more than the two black guys.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Because of being on the stage. Yeah. And so it makes me just think, you're right. People turn to sports because they want an out. That's why they're saying shut up and dribble. But what's interesting for your industry and comparable industries is that those people who say to LeBron, shut up and dribble, buy tickets. And so talk to me a little bit about how the audiences have changed and may change moving ahead, because we certainly need more of an escape because of having been trapped inside because of COVID. And so if I'm watching games and I'm seeing people wearing shirts saying I can't breathe or say her name, and it's in my face. And so now if I want to see my special sporting event, someone's going to be kneeling, somebody's going to be saying something or wearing something. What impact is that having in terms of ticket buyers? And not just in the NBA, but maybe just in sporting events in general. Is your industry really worried about how the world has even divided your fan base?
It's a great question you asked, Dr. G. And I was at the NBA when we put Black Lives Matter on our court in the bubble, and in Orlando, and our players, Milwaukee Bucks, protested because of Jacob Blake's shoe, right? The impact, don't have specific numbers or what it's going to be in the future, but what I would say is this is an opportunity to me, when we talk about honest conversations, this is the chance now to say, what value of life are you given to someone who dribbles a basketball for your favorite team? What value of life are you given to someone who might catch the ball from one of your favorite quarterbacks on one of your favorite team? And this is when I keep going to honest conversations. The impact, I don't know what it will be, but I know that there's a generation of fans coming up right now that expect for us to speak up for marginalized communities, and that expect for us to allow our players to speak authentically about what's important to them with respect to social justice and what's important to them, because it likely aligns, right? So I would say this to me is an opportunity. I'm not looking at it as a negative as much as I'm looking at it as an opportunity. How can we continue to work with our players, work with professional athletes across the board, and say, we stand for something. And while not everybody agrees, we will be able to find people who align with us. And how can we move the ball forward with respect to what the actual issue is? Forget if you don't like LeBron James because of what he does and what he says on Twitter. What about the impact that he's trying to make in his community?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
The Promise School and what he's done in Akron, Ohio, with respect to providing education to not only the kids, but the parents, an opportunity. If you say to me that the value of the kids' lives that LeBron James is trying to help are invaluable, then that's a different story. But to me, this is bigger than just saying, I don't like that somebody's saying Black Lives Matter, right? This is an opportunity for us to, again, work with people who are passionate about making change in our country and leveraging our platform to do that.
I love it, leveraging the platform. You know, when I was a kid, I always enjoyed watching award shows. So the Grammys, the Emmys, the Oscars. But I remember at the Oscars, there were certain actors who would be cut off because they would start making political statements. I remember Lynn Redgrave or Vanessa Redgrave or Sally Field, because when she won the Oscar for Norma Ray, she started talking about workers' rights and unions. And, you know, the Oscars music would come in. And so there has been a bit of an intolerance when people have thought, look, just act, Lynn Redgrave, just act, Sally Field. Don't get up and be political. So we knew that would happen. In sports, it's African-American folks that are speaking out a lot. And so do you think that that's adding to people's frustration or intolerance, but because they've never heard wealthy, popular, cereal box, gym shoe, mogul, t-shirt mogul, Black folks saying this is wrong? Because I know they're thinking, listen, you make $1 billion a year. How are you going to school me on injustice? And I'm wondering if it's the fact that they're making statements and they're Black and they make more money than they do, that's all just making some folks just way more intolerant of the political statements of these Black folks than even some of the white actors on the Oscar stage.
It's a good point, and I can't speak to why someone feels one way or another, but what I can say, you might be onto something as it relates to the fact that, I don't know if you remember this, but when Michael Jordan, the criticism that he got when he said, somebody asked him a question about something that was happening in the Black community, or something that was happening, and he said something about Republicans buy tennis shoes too. So Michael Jordan, preeminent athlete at the time that was on every commercial. And when he said that, there was this like, oh, great, we'll cheer for Michael Jordan. He wants to play basketball and he wants to make money. He's a capitalist. So yes, let's rah for Michael Jordan. Today's athlete is different. So yeah, there could be something said. And if you look at any Twitter comments or Instagram comments, when any of these athletes or actors say that Black Lives Matter or speak up on anything, those people on social media are pretty vocal. Hey, what do you have to complain about right now? You get paid millions to dribble a ball, catch a ball, throw a ball, whatever it is. And it could have something to do with the fact that they are Black and somewhat empowered and have a platform. So yeah, I definitely could see that being an issue, but I could also see it being just continued highlight of you seeing it in your face, right? Yes. Me, common person, I can speak about the inequities and I can speak about what's happening in our society, but you're not following me on Instagram. You're not following me on Twitter. But if swipe after swipe on social media is these people speaking up, regardless of if they're Black or white, if they're speaking up on something that you might not agree with, might not understand, might not want to have an agreement or understanding about it, I don't think it matters what color you are if you're saying it. It's just in your face now. So some people, listen, Dr. G, I am of the mindset, let's find the people that want to ride with us and ride. If you don't want to ride, there's not much I'm going to change about what you think. There's likely more people that agree with me. So let's find those folks.
Let's find those people and put the energy into that. Do you sense that, let's just say even with the organizations you've worked in, are you seeing more awareness among non-Black athletes in understanding these issues? I met Kyle inadvertently by meeting his wife at a conference that I was speaking at in Los Angeles. And at the break, she said, "Oh, I enjoyed your talk. I'm from Milwaukee. I'm from Wisconsin too." I saw her name badge, told her, "I've been trying to meet your husband for 3 months because I love that article he wrote about white privilege." But it was like pulling teeth to get Kyle to do that episode because he didn't want to be bashed by Black people who are asking, well, why are you woke now? And he didn't want to deal with the white people feeling like whatever the sellout, that you're the person that's in the NBA. So now you're going to apologize for being white. And that's not what he was doing at all. But he was, so I think there's some unique space, between that incident that he talks about in New York, where his colleague, and I'm blanking right now on his name, leg was broken.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. It was years between then and the Russ Westbrook, thing in Utah that Kyle kind of got this aha. It was like a 3-year journey, and he was reading books and listening to podcasts, and he's still somewhat hesitant. He's doing it more. He's doing things. Do you think that there's a growing number of particularly white athletes who are trying to find their voices, or even the sense of responsibility to be more vocal in spaces about the importance of unity and getting rid of the systemic racism in our world?
It's a good question. I don't interface a ton with athletes, but I'd have to imagine given Kyle stepping out and saying what he said and kind of leading the charge on educating himself. I do think there's just more of an awareness now that it can't just be me putting my head in the sand. I don't know exactly. I'll probably put this in the space of the front office and like employees on the business side, because that's what I'm closer to. I will say my non-Black colleagues, after George Floyd was murdered, I was at the league office. I can't tell you how many texts I got.
Sure.
Just tell me where to look to educate myself. Because the fact that I don't know about what's happening right now is disappointing. These are the texts that are coming from friends, from colleagues that are non-Black. So I will say, I don't know if there's a specific change in white athletes, but I will say there is a turn with respect to people now digging in and really trying to understand the systemic racist issues that are at play, because it's not as simple as, hey, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and go to college and you'll be successful. There's no reason why you can't be successful in this country, because everybody can live the American dream. I think people are really starting to tap into and educate themselves around where the system has failed. Failed Black people, failed brown people, with respect to access. And I keep going to the wealth gap and the education gap. I had an interesting conversation with, I won't say who, because they might be listening, or somebody that might be listening, someone who's in their 70s that is a white male that did not even know, who served in the military, did not know the discrepancies between the GI Bill and what meant when you left the military as a youth, if you were white versus if you were Black, right?
You
Black
could
people were,
buy a home if you were white.
Exactly. And that's the ultimate, from when you talk about laying the foundation, wealth, home ownership, right? And so I just had a conversation randomly with this person, and they were like, I didn't know that. They didn't even believe me. I pointed them to resources and started a conversation about, wow, did not know. So point me in the right direction to continue to learn more about this. And, that's kind of how I look at opportunities when I talk to my white colleagues, white friends, is what can I do to point you in the right direction to learn more? If you're open to it, like I said earlier, if you want to ride and if you want to learn, we can send you some educational resources because they're out there, right? So that's a long-winded way of me saying, I can't speak to white athletes in particular, but I can speak to my colleagues. I mean, I'm primarily the only Black person, the only woman in a lot of my spaces. So I just try to use that opportunity to educate and listen.
Sure. No, that's a good answer. When I think about baseball, football, and basketball, which of the sports which has the highest percentage of Black participants? Would it be the NBA?
NBA, likely, yeah. I think the NBA is roughly 73, 75% Black.
Then NFL probably comes next.
Mm-hmm.
So the highest role in the NBA is what? The commissioner?
In the NBA, yeah.
So let's say tomorrow you're the commissioner, and you have unlimited budget, and you have an opportunity to influence. you could encourage team, and if you had some say so over all of the NBA teams, you know, not ownership, but you could influence them. You could bring the coaches and the owners together, and they really would listen to your suggestions. And they're trying to figure out, how do we make a change in the next 5 years? Is it putting money towards community development and investing in youth? Is it hiring more people in the front office? Is it Black ownership of teams? And I know this is all hypothetical, but sometimes we talk about community involvement, but the taboo subject of Black owners rarely comes up. So I'm curious, any idea of where you would start or prioritize to make the most impact within teams or within the sports? I say within the sport. Would it be with community involvement or helping more Black people become owners?
Whew. First priority have to be community involvement, right? When you talk about, you know, what I mentioned earlier with respect to being a taker or a giver in your community, if you have access to capital, or if your ownership group has access to capital, how can you diminish or how can you lessen the wealth gap in your community, right? So these are the questions that I hypothetically would ask to owners.
Sure.
What are you doing in Milwaukee to lessen the wealth gap and lessen the education gap in your community? Because in my opinion, and I'm in no way an expert, education, access to quality education, access to food, not having food deserts in your community, right?
Right.
Those are the kind of things that mean the difference to me, from a kid going to school hungry, thus being unable to learn, thus being able to continue through school, thus being able to go to college and or go to trade school and to provide for themselves down the road. So the first thing I would say is community involvement. Sure, I would love to have more minority owners. I think that'd be great. But if the money's not trickling down from the top to the community, it matters not if they're Black or not.
I like that, because everyone thinks about the ownership part. Do you foresee that in your career, we'll see substantial more Black owners or Black ownership groups?
I do yes, I do think we will see more Black ownership. As you know, the athletes now are making more money, right? So when we think about, we talked about Michael Jordan earlier, but if you go back to Kareem's time, or you go back to Dr. J's time, the amount of money they had to invest in ownership of a team.
It's a different ball game, no pun intended, but it's a different ball game, isn't it?
It is a different ball game. I mean, you have players making tens of millions of dollars and investing smartly, right, in tech and in startups. So I definitely see you're going to see more Black ownership, and a lot of them will be players becoming owners.
Definitely. Well, listen, I know you all have, big game coming up, and you've been so generous with your time. I think I could just sum up what you're saying is that a team like the Bucks is interested in a win-win, not only on the court, but in the community. And that's important. That's really, really important, because there are a plethora of businesses in Milwaukee, around Wisconsin, who aren't thinking so deliberately about their corporate responsibility in the community, and the fact that you all have staff to do that, and that's part of someone's responsibility, yours, to think about all of these issues, is really, really encouraging. And so anything else you want to add or say before I wind down, Raven? No, this was great. I really love the icebreakers at the beginning. I'm curious what some of the other 40 are. After the podcast, we should chat offline, because I'm curious how aligned we are. But yeah. Definitely. No, definitely. We can talk about those, because sometimes my Black friends will say after listening, "Oh, I got one for you. And then we'll start adding things. And some of them are too extreme or too connected, people who pull out a straw from the broom to pick something out of their teeth. Well, I had an aunt who did that, but I don't know if younger people would know that. So some of them just make me laugh really hard, because I just realized Black people are creative and funny. Yeah, the icebreakers make my day. Sometimes I can just read through some of them and start laughing and think, you know what? It's going to be a good day. It's going to be a good day. Yes, the broom situation did throw me off, though, Dr. G. Pulling, I had an aunt that did that. And I, even at a young age, I was like, are we doing that? Because that was just on the floor. You're going to put that in your mouth. I don't understand. Yes, that's how they did, and they would pull it out, and they would be their toothpick, and what I didn't realize that my aunt was using a part that wasn't touching the ground, but it was still close to the ground. If you sweeping up dirt, it's still close to it. But you know what? Folks had to do what they had to do. It just makes you realize the ingenuity of our folks. Listen, folks, my special guest today has been Raven Jemison, the executive vice president of business operations for the Milwaukee Bucks. New Wisconsinite, has been here since February of this year. And Raven was just generous enough to come on and talk with me a little bit about experiences, thoughts about sports, where sports are going, and what's next for society. It's just real insightful stuff. So I wish you every success in your work. Looking forward to either connecting in Milwaukee or just hosting you or friends here in Madison. When you just, when the season's over and just want to hang out and see another part of the state, we would love to show you around Madison. And so you all, as always, I encourage you to lean in, to listen, to learn, share this episode because you have lots of sports fans and you have lots of Bucks fans. So share it, but also when you repost it and make comments about it, what was insightful, what was helpful, wherever it is you download this. If it's the Apple Store, go there and write a response or a review. Go to alexg.com and subscribe so that you can follow other things that I'm posting, and click the Patreon link so that you can find out how to be a supporter of this great podcast. Thank you all so much for listening and being a part of Black Like Me. Have a great day, and I look forward to talking with you more next time.
Black Like Me. Black.
This has been another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. Special shout out to Eli and to Jeremy, who are my engineers and my editors on this, to Don Thornton, who is my podcast manager, who makes sure that we line all of this up, to Corey Saffold, who is responsible for that exciting new jingle, that Black Like Me jingle. I'm so excited about that. And to vocals by Marcus Fleming.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Alex G's amazing work at alexg.com. Black Like Me is sponsored by the generosity of the Human Family Unity Foundation.
Black Like Me.